Tonight, as the president's legal team continues to make its argument defending President Trump, there's a renewed call for witnesses, that in the wake of revelations from none other than John Bolton. But will 4 Republicans defy this president and vote to call for them? Then former federal prosecutor Mimi Rocha joins us to take a look at the legal issues involved, and there's a whole lot of them. Also, veteran groups, they're outraged. President Trump downplayed head injuries suffered by more than 30 U.S. soldiers after Iran retaliated and struck bases in Iraq. And now they're speaking out. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. I hope you enjoyed your weekend. Well, it's going to be a rough week. It could be the break that Democrats have been hoping for as the impeachment trial of President Trump continues in what will be a historic week. A new explosive report that former National Security Advisor John Bolton not only knew all about Trump's Ukraine pressure scheme, but that the president told Bolton about it himself. Direct first-person reported potential witness testimony. And for more on Bolton, the impact this report could have on the trial, and much more, let's turn to Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. And Andrew, we didn't know at the end of last week what this week held. We doubted if 4 Republicans, though, with the current landscape, and I thought Schiff did a good job of laying out, among the other managers, a compelling argument. But nonetheless, I wasn't sure, nor were you, that 4 Republicans will break ranks. And we still don't know for sure. But the Bolton revelation, or hint of the revelation, that certainly could be a game changer.
And it's so big, Rich, that in fact, Democrats have been pushing for John Bolton to be called as an impeachment witness. But until this weekend, even top Democrats had mixed emotions about actually hearing from Bolton. Why? They were unsure what he might say or if he might try to protect the president if he was called. Now that fear appears to be gone. The New York Times leaking details from the manuscript of Bolton's upcoming book, which has been circulated to some close colleagues and to the White House. In it, Bolton says that in August, Trump told Bolton directly, in person, that he wanted to continue the freeze on military aid to Ukraine until Ukraine helped with investigations into Joe and Hunter Biden. If true, it would be firsthand knowledge that the president not only knew about the Ukraine quid pro quo, but that it was on his order, his quid pro quo the entire time. And the president, not the only administration member who Bolton is putting in the barrel. Bolton's story also implicated Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who acknowledged to Bolton that there was no basis for claims that the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine was corrupt, and that Pompeo suspected Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani was working for other clients in Ukraine alongside the president. Attorney General Bill Barr is also caught in the story Bolton is telling. Bolton says he talked to Barr about Giuliani after the July phone call. Barr publicly says he only learned about Giuliani and the call in August. Bolton puts Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney inside the scheme on at least one phone call where Trump and Giuliani talked about the ambassador. And the timing of Bolton's disclosures could put White House counsel Pat Cipollone in the hot seat, too. Bolton submitted his book to the White House for approval and security clearance in December, 12 days after the president was impeached. That means the script likely went to the counsel's office, that's Cipollone, who is also Trump's lead impeachment lawyer, who has said in the trial that no witnesses have firsthand knowledge of the president's thinking or actions, statements that could become lies or at least disproven if Cipollone knew of Bolton's recollections. Bolton's name was not mentioned during the impeachment trial today as Trump's legal team continued to try and discredit the case against him, but it was on the minds of senators and of the president. In a tweet, Trump accused Bolton of trying to sell books. He also said point blank that he never told Bolton that aid to Ukraine was tied to investigations. Some saying that with this comment, Trump may have eroded his ability to claim privilege to try and block Bolton from testifying. Trump was also retweeting today responses from supporters which added up to arguments that include nobody cares, that Bolton, who is more conservative than Trump, is actually a, quote, rejected neocon, and that Bolton's claims are manufactured and can't be trusted because the New York Times is the one who broke the story. Trump's TV defenders tried the "this doesn't change anything" defense also.
You got someone telling the New York Times what supposedly John Bolton's manuscript says. So, and that's going to change everything. I mean, I just don't buy that because it doesn't alter in any way the fundamental facts, the facts that have been clear from the get-go.
Or you could just talk to Bolton. But only 4 Republicans are needed to vote to approve witnesses, and at least one is now clearly off the Trump reservation.
I've said for some time that I hope to be able to hear from John Bolton. I think with the story that came out yesterday, it's increasingly apparent that it would be important to hear from John Bolton. I, of course, will make a final decision on witnesses after we've heard from not only the prosecution but also the defense. but I think at this stage it's pretty fair to say that John Bolton has a relevant testimony to provide to those of us who are sitting in impartial justice. I think it's increasingly likely that other Republicans will join those of us who think we should hear from John Bolton.
Add to that list maybe Republican Susan Collins from Maine, who's always hinting she could vote either way. She said the revelations strengthen the case for witnesses and have prompted conversations among Republicans in the Senate. She added again that she is likely to support calling witnesses. But it's this tweet from Lindsey Graham that, at least to me, may be an indication the dam is bursting. He tweeted that if witnesses are called, they should be called for both sides. This is not the kind of tweet Lindsey Graham would issue if he really thought that witnesses aren't really going to happen. So one Republican wants witnesses, another is likely to vote that way, but Democrats need 4 Republicans to vote yes if witnesses will be called. And other than Romney and Collins, we don't have a lot of good info on where these Republicans are. Pennsylvania's Pat Toomey reportedly talking to Republicans about 1-for-1 trades on witnesses, saying it may be necessary at some point. Lisa Murkowski, Cory Gardner, Lamar Alexander, all silent so far today. Martha McSally was leaning against witnesses before the Bolton story. No word from her today. North Carolina's Tom Tillis, we heard from him today. He still sounded opposed to witnesses this morning. Now, if witnesses are called, that could extend the trial indefinitely. If not, the impeachment trial could be over this week. The president's defense team is on the clock today and tomorrow with questions by senators set for Wednesday and Thursday. That could be sped up if the Trump team goes short or there aren't enough questions somehow to fill 2 days. Votes on motions, though, including whether to hold witnesses or even to dismiss the case, could come on Friday. It's worth remembering Bolton not the only witness the Democrats want to hear from. Mick Mulvaney and Lev Parnas are also possibilities, as are the others on the screen. And 2 other names that are not on the screen, Mike Pompeo and Attorney General Bill Barr's names, have also been mentioned. Now, if witnesses are approved, there's no way to know how long that witness process might take. So it seems likely that if witnesses are called, the trial could very well continue past the Iowa caucuses, the State of the Union address, New Hampshire, maybe even Nevada and South Carolina. Got to start looking at that point for Super Tuesday on March 3rd, which could be in play. The Bolton revelations coming so recently that they have not been baked into any impeachment polls. But before that story broke, a new Fox News poll showed still a majority of Americans want the Senate to convict and remove President Trump from office. The margin 50-44. And again, this is coming from Fox News. Now, their poll also had more people with their minds made up than other polls. Fox has 48% not wanting new witness evidence versus 44% who do, though other recent polls had showed larger majorities wanting witnesses, including most polls that show a majority of Republican voters want witnesses as well.
And again,
Rich?
that was before the revelation of what was in Bolton's book, at least the manuscript. We're going to talk a little bit later. We'll be joined by Mimi Rokas, as I mentioned off the top, talk about the case that the president's counsel has been putting on. To say it's curious at best, I think is being somewhat charitable here. But I took something else that we heard specifically from Romney, not just that he wants to hear from witnesses, but he made a point at the end, which is it's very likely that the Republicans are there. I believe the only question right now is not whether or not there's 51 votes for witnesses for Republicans, but moreover, it's if they can get Democrats to give them a trade that they can live with. You're a poker player. I think Democrats have the whip hand right now that they don't have to have a Biden go forward and say, no, it's up or out or Bolton straight up. Would 4 Republicans go for that deal? They're damned if they do, damned if they don't. If they don't, then it looks like they don't want to hear from somebody who was in the room, so what are they trying to hide? And if they do, they don't know what Bolton has, because one thing about Bolton, he is famous, notorious, depending on your thing, for keeping contemporaneous notes. Mm-hmm. So it's not just his version versus someone else's. He's going to, this was our conversation here. And I think that would concern the president.
If you had asked me the same question on Friday, this is before we even had the president's defense case starting in the Senate, I might have been inclined to say Democrats should go for a Bolton for Biden swap. I mean, I don't think Joe Biden has that much to lose, and it looked like when Friday went, I didn't think the Democrats had any chance of getting witnesses and all this. I think they would be smart at this point not to make that trade or offer that trade. Yeah, I think the onus really is on Republicans, and they're feeling the pressure a lot more at this point. So why not see if you can get witness vote without having to offer a trade?
There's another variable here. Clearly Republicans, and we'll get into it, as I said, next segment, the legal case that the president's counsel's put on, both the attorneys and Republicans have not been given the green light to go out and say it wasn't a perfect phone call. Mistakes were made. Hopefully he's learned his lesson, he won't do it again, but it's not a high crime and a misdemeanor enough to remove him from office. Let the electorate decide in November. Because they have not been released to do that, they're in such a difficult situation, particularly the half dozen senators that have really tough re-elections ahead of them right now. They're being forced to defend something that they know more is going to come out. The book's going to come out. More FOIA requests for more documents are going to come out. Who else? I mean, look at what we saw with the audio tapes that you know, private conversations. I'll play it for you next segment about the president saying, you know, he wanted Yovanovitch bounced, right? And you can go on chapter and verse here. It's a really tough spot for Republicans right now.
The decision all comes back to home state pressures on these individual senators, particularly those who are up for re-election this fall. Both the primary pressure from fellow Republicans from the right, but then also general election pressures. And as we've been reviewing, the numbers on almost all of these senators who are up for re-election in potentially close states are running well against the president and running well in favor of calling witnesses. So and that was before the Bolton revelations. Once that breaks the news, you got to figure those numbers are probably going to increase against those Republicans and put them in an even tougher spot.
And we'll get into this more tomorrow, but there's so many stages. If, in fact, there are witnesses, there has to be depositions. Then it's behind closed doors, obviously. Then will it be made public? And all these votes that are attached to this. Will the president challenge this and claim executive privilege? So where if you thought we'd be in the final endings of this right now, we may just be in the beginning ones. We're going to see how this all plays out. But certainly the Bolton revelation, as I said off the top, a game changer. All right. Andrew's going to stay with me because when we come next, a former federal prosecutor will join us to discuss the case against Trump and the defense the president's attorneys are mounting.